Hello everyone, I'm Andrea Riposati, CEO of Dante Labs. Thanks for joining me today for this webinar. The goal of this webinar is to tell the story of Dante Labs and also to answer any questions you may have. So, as you know, Dante Labs, we are focused on the whole genome sequencing. So why the whole genome sequencing? The whole genome sequencing is, by definition, the most comprehensive genetic test that you can have. So in theory, it makes perfect sense for every company in the world to offer whole genome sequencing and for every person to get a whole genome sequencing. However, we realize that with the whole genome sequencing, there are some problems. The first problem historically was the data analysis, because the data analysis of the whole genome requires algorithms and software and storage capacity, which are completely different from the data analysis of a microarray or a gene panel. And then the second problem is the cost, because historically whole genome sequencing has been extremely expensive, like $50,000, $30,000, and even today, or at least until a year ago, some hospitals or clinics still charge $5,000 or $6,000 for a whole genome sequencing. So as Dante Labs, we decided to solve these two issues in order to impact the lives of the people around the world and to provide affordable and accessible whole genome sequencing to everyone, independently from where they live. And so the first thing that we did when we started Dante Labs and we started commercializing the whole genome sequencing tests in 2017 was to provide free shipping for everyone in the world, so that people living in the middle of the Pacific Ocean could access the same advanced technology with the same costs of someone living in New York, London, or in Rome. And then the second thing that we did was working on and developing our own algorithms and software to generate reports. But when we started Dante Labs, we did not have the capacity to build the lab, neither we had the funds to build the lab, and we decided to rely on third-party labs. And we thought that that would be a very smart choice, because using third-party labs allowed us to avoid building our own lab, our own sequencing center, and spending money on equipment. And that worked quite well at the beginning. That choice allowed us to build and develop our own software dedicated to whole genome sequencing. That allowed us to launch our own personalized reports, our pharmacogenomics report, and our reports for predispositions. Then, meanwhile, interacting with customers, we also realized that even a price of $700, $800 was too high for a lot of people that need a whole genome sequencing for diagnostics or to solve a family history, or for all the people like undiagnosed patients. And so, for the Black Friday of 2018, we decided to offer a great promotion and launching a whole genome sequencing for $200, which was a very successful promotion. It also created a lot of volumes, and because of those volumes, we made some mistakes. The first mistake was actually during the Black Friday, we ran out of saliva collection kits. And so some people received their saliva collection kits late, and we did not message that, that issue properly. But then the bigger issue became that because of the high volumes with the whole genome sequencing, the third-party labs were not prepared to sequence our samples. And so that led to an increase in the turnaround time by these labs, which led to an increase in the delays where we were giving the results back to our users. In parallel, because of the high volumes of those samples and the higher amount of work that we had decided to externalize customer care to a third-party company. At the beginning, that worked well and allowed us to spend more time on making sure everyone received their data and making sure we could manage all the high volumes of samples, data, reports, and results. But then that decision proved a poor decision, because the third-party company did not have full access to the information we had. And so in the end, they were not able to provide actual answers to the people asking questions about where the sample is, or generally speaking about their sequencing. And meanwhile, while we started realizing that we were experiencing delays by the third-party labs, we probably didn't, well, actually, for sure, we did not alert most of our users about those delays. And that behavior, together with the lack of precise information by our customer service, created a lot of frustration in a lot of people who purchased our whole genome sequencing tests. So then, and that was about like spring of this year. So spring 2019, we decided that it was time, number one, to invest and build our own sequencing center, which you can see behind me. And that, of course, was a big investment. But today we're extremely happy, and we realized that our initial assumption in 2017 that you can offer high quality service for whole genome sequencing tests without your own sequencing center was wrong. So today, now I'm sitting in the last room of the sequencing center, which right now hosts about it was actually exactly three Nova 66000 machines, plus some Oxford Nanopore machines for long-read sequencing. And so we're able to sequence all the samples internally. It's been a complete game changer for us, and it allows us to prioritize samples and to offer qualities of service that we could not dream of before. However, while we built the whole genome sequencing center here, we were still using the third-party company for customer service, and there was a lack of communication between us and the third-party company. And so finally, 3 weeks ago, we also decided to allow people, we also decided to re-internalize customer service. And so now we have a team of internal customer care specialists who sit 2 rooms behind me. So very close to the lab, very close to the bioinformaticians and the software developers, very close to everyone at Dante Labs. And so by working all together here, that allows us to have full, complete control of the sequencing process, of the bioinformatics, of the reporting, and also knowing exactly at every second where a kit is. And now we also manage all the logistics, except for the United States from here, from Italy, from our own sequencing center. The logistics in the United States, as our US customers know, is managed out of Utah from a logistics center which has been great and uses USPS, collects the saliva collection kits back in Utah, and then ships them to us twice a week. So that after a couple of days, we receive them here, and we are able to, to sequence the US samples as well. Now, when we activated our own sequencing center, we also realized that we could offer a premium turnaround time, like a very quick turnaround time of 2 weeks. Actually, we also, today, in some cases, in some urgent cases, we manage also to deliver full results in less than 1 week, but it was really like extreme cases. The fact when we launched the 2-week premium turnaround time, that caused also some, I would say, some anger in some people who had been waiting for sequencing for many months, especially people who had been waiting since Black Friday. Now, if you look at our website, you know that we have the premium service, the 2-week turnaround time. We also have a premium test, the whole genome Z, and we also have an intro test. Now, this having different types of services means that there are some premium services like the 2-week turnaround time that generate a margin. And that positive margin, that's what allows us, together with our equity funds and our grants, to then finance special offers like the Black Friday offer last year, like future offers that we will have this year and next year. So this is the reason why we keep these different services. We provide premium services to people who want to pay more. And then that margin, the positive margin, that's what allows us to provide like whole genome sequencing services at very affordable conditions for people around the world. And finally, one last point also I would like to discuss is the raw data and the delivery of the hard drives, which has been another pain point for many of our users. So in terms of sequencing, of course, the first file that is generated is the FASTQ file. Then the second file is the BAM file, and finally the VCF files. Now, the FASTQ and the BAM files are about 100 gigabytes each, while the VCF file is about 150 megabytes. So it's much easier to transfer the VCF file, which is why even now people usually receive the VCF file first and then the FASTQ and the BAM file. What happened in the past is that we had issues with one of the labs with the delivery of some of the FASTQ and BAM files. Also, some of these, by some different labs actually, some of these files were delivered via hard drive. So that caused delays by us in delivering then the raw data to some of our users. So what we did 3 weeks ago, we started migrating all the hard drives to our cloud. And this is why now more and more people are receiving FASTQ and BAM files after many weeks. And then also now we are resequencing samples where we have not delivered the BAM and the FASTQ file, and it's hard for us to retrieve those files. Some people, I would say about probably 50 people, have also received the new saliva collection kit so that we can actually take a new sample, resequence that, and then provide them with the full raw data. And of course, these are all things that we're doing free of charge to make sure that everyone receives their full results. The raw data, the reports, the customized reports, and when I say raw data, is BAM file, FASTQ file, and VCF files, all of them. And now in terms, I would say now we are almost done with our backlog. There are individual cases that pop up here and there, so that in that case we make sure to prioritize those samples so that all the previous users that the older users, they receive everything as soon as possible. In terms of what really drives us and what really motivated us to make investments this year to provide everyone with the best quality of whole genome sequencing services, you really like the happiness that we realize we can make in the life of people, especially like people that have been undiagnosed for years, and where we can finally provide them and their doctors with a tool so that they can receive extremely complete information about the whole genome. In parallel, we also realize that a lot of you are really interested also in ancestry and in the use of whole genome sequencing for ancestry, especially in the Y and mtDNA chromosomes, in the Y chromosome and mtDNA from the BAM file. So now what we are doing is that we will launch a widget in December where all of you will be able to generate a small file, a small set of the BAM file, which contains just the mtDNA plus the Y chromosome and the X chromosome for women, so that the small BAM file can be easily transferred to platforms such as YFull or My True Ancestry. And also we will create a link that will be a public link, can be copy and pasted into this third-party platform, so that you can leverage those platforms without having to download and then re-upload the BAM file. And this is why we're here. So before closing the webinar, before opening up the webinar to questions, I would like to tell you a story, and that's the story of Johannes. Johannes is a gentleman from Wales who was born with a genetic condition that manifested when he was 5 years old. And for many years, Johannes had a traditional approach to healthcare, where he would visit the doctors, and then the doctors would give him some treatment, but that treatment would only last for a couple of weeks. And so for many years, Johannes' conditions were totally undiagnosed by his doctor. And not by the fault of the doctor, but just by the fault of the technology. So Johannes needed help, and he found us, and he purchased a whole genome sequencing test with us back in early 2018. And then we provided Johannes with our health and wellness test report, the pharmacogenomic report, and also with a customized report based on the description of his symptoms. And with those reports, he went back to the hospital, and finally, after 50 years, his doctor was able to precisely diagnose his condition, and more importantly, to provide him with a therapy that has been effective since then. So that now, finally, after so many years, Johannes can live a normal life again. And Johannes was also the first person who emailed us and explained us, told us his story. And that's when we realized the real power of the whole genome sequencing. And that's also when we realized that we were working on something bigger than us, and so that we have to have a full commitment to all of our users. But Johannes then, in our email exchanges, also told us that, again, $700 was not expensive if compared to $5,000, but still expensive when compared to what most people can pay, especially patients who have been paying very high hospital bills, so have spent their entire life taking very expensive therapies. And so that's why we took our second commitment, which was the commitment of allowing people to get whole genome sequencing at very affordable prices. And so these two commitments, together with our commitment to make more and more analysis available to everyone, is what we will make sure that we do. And if some of you attendees here have had issues with us in the past, or if your friends had issues with us in the past, you know that we are here to help. No one will be left behind. Everyone will receive the full results, one way or the other. Really, in the worst case, we'll send a new collection kit for free and resequence everything here. And now I would like to open up the floor to some questions. You can use the chat function to ask questions, and then I'll be happy to reply to those questions. Okay, so one question is why I received my results after some people who had purchased the test 3 months after I purchased my test. So the reason is that when we start sequencing all our samples, well, there are two reasons. One reason is that when we were sending samples to third-party labs, some labs were faster than other labs, so some people were luckier in a way, and so they received their results before other people, even if they purchased the test and they returned the saliva collection kit at the same time. Another reason is also when we start sequencing here, some samples can reach the 30x storage before other samples, and so that's the reason why some people will receive the results first. But now we make sure that we use a chronological order based on when we receive the saliva collection kit back, so that people can receive the results in the fairer way. Okay, so I think there are no more questions. This was the first webinar, so thanks so much for joining me today. We will organize more webinars in the future, also with more members of the team, to make sure that we improve not just on the sequencing, but also on the communication.